A prisoner in the United States has recently been released from prison, spending 44 years in prison for attempted murder. Now he's walking around very different New York City, as you can see pictured here, and he's bewildered by the world in front of him. He sees these people walking around the streets with headphones dangling from their ears, and they're talking to themselves, and he's reminded of CIA agents. He's really bewildered because he can't anticipate anything like this happening. So he's wondering to themselves, why are these people not paying any attention to their surroundings and instead are studying their smartphones while crossing the street, completely engrossed in their own personal bubbles? As you can see, within 40 years, technology has dramatically changed the way we live and the way we relate to one another. I study this. I've always been fascinated by technology use, and I've always been wondering, why is it that we are using technology on such a frequent basis? Why is it that we often use our smartphone the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night? Why is it that we spend hours engrossed in our smartphones, checking our social media feeds, just checking whether anything else has been happening on our social networking sites? And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. I want to discuss with you why I believe that social networking is indeed a way of being. Now, social networking is a part of social media. People use social networks in order to connect with other people who are sharing similar interests. Lots of you will be using Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube on a regular basis. But there are also more niche sites that I would consider social networking sites. These sites contain online games, for example, like World of Warcraft, where people share the interest in online gaming together, but also websites such as online dating sites like Tinder, for example, where people share the interest in dating. So lots of us will be using several social networking sites. We'll have several accounts. And on average, we have about 8 accounts. Now, this is quite a few social networking accounts, if you ask me. Social networking really allows us to connect with people around us by means of using technology. Now, how do we use technology on an everyday basis? I've got a couple of examples for you from my own life. Now, what you can see here is my friend Anna. This is during a Da Vinci exhibition in London last year. We went to see the beautiful drawings. And Anna, as you can see, she's really enjoyed the drawings. But at the same time, she was really keen to engage with a social networking site in order to share the experience with our friends who couldn't be there at the time. That allowed those friends to feel part of the fun, although they were not present, not physically present at the time. And at the same time, it allowed her to feel connected to her wider group of friends, which was a great experience for her. Now here, this is me taking pictures of Johnston Canyon in the beautiful Rocky Mountains in Canada last year as well. An amazing, beautiful scenery. And of course, I had to capture that experience because this is what we do nowadays, isn't it? Capturing experiences to make sure that we can authenticate those experiences. And this is exactly what has come out of my research. We capture experiences to authenticate them, to make them real. Social networking allows us to make experiences real. If those experiences weren't shared on social networks, they might not exist, they might not be there. And this is what has come out of my research, where participants have told me, if it's on social networking sites, you were there, you were present. And this is indeed how people are using their social networks in an everyday context, on an everyday basis nowadays. In addition to this, what I've got here for you is my smartphone use. You will have your smartphones, and your smartphones will be able to tell you how you're using your technology. Now, this is a screenshot of me using technology the other day. It basically was midday, and I had already spent 1.5 hours using primarily my social networks. Half an hour spent on Facebook, about half an hour spent on WhatsApp. That is 1 hour of use by midday, social networking sites only. And I spent some time on some other apps. I've unlocked my phone 20 times by that time, and I had received 92 notifications, bearing in mind that I have indeed switched off most of the notifications for most of my apps. Now I ask you to do the same. check with your phone, how much time are you actually spending using your social networking sites? You might be surprised. I do that kind of exercise often with my students, and I ask them, oh, check your phone. Tell me how much time are you spending on social media, on social networks? And very often what happens is that what they think they've spent on social networks is significantly lower than the actual time their smartphone will tell them that they spend on those social networking sites. So this is how we spend a lot of our time. Social networking is a way of being. In the present day and age, we are living increasingly mediated lives, and social networks or social networking isn't just something that we do, but really social networking is the way that we are. It's a way of being. It's how we relate to other people. It is a very important way of how we're able to connect to the world around us. And now is also the time where a new generation of young scholars has grown up, really finding that the increasing use of social networking is an integral element of their everyday lives. Now, this is what has been referred to as the always-on lifestyle by one of my favorite media scholars, Dana Boyd. Now, what she says is the following. It's no longer about on or off, really. It's about living in a world whenever you want to, you need to be networked to people and information wherever and whenever you need to. And this is just assumed. So this is really the status quo. That basically means that in the first place, social networking is the status quo. This is how we are living our lives. And this has come out of my research as well. I've asked participants about their use, and that those tend to be young technology users. And they say to me they're using their social networks in order not to feel alone. They're always connected. They can use their messages, they can use their calls, they can use their text to stay connected. It also allows them to combat any periods of loneliness as well, because even if they might not be able to engage with other people in their immediate social surroundings, what they can do is to engage with their social networks. And this allows them to feel connected, to feel that they are part of a group, to feel that sense of belonging and of community as well. Secondly, it also this quote assumes that really, being part of a wider community, being networked at all times is something that is assumed in this culture, in our present day culture that loves technology, just like I do, just like you do. I'm sure we're all very regular technology users, social networking users. Dana Boyd herself refers to having to take a digital sabbatical in order to disconnect, in order to take a holiday from connecting. But the caveat, however, is that really what she will do is to still use her social networks, but decide which messages to respond to and which messages not to respond to. And this is the kind of freedom that we have with social networking sites. So we are indeed living the always-on lifestyle. Social networks allow us to live the always-on lifestyle. And this can be seen here. Now, this is a picture of my very dear friends, Isabella and Wedit, last year during our annual Christmas dinner. We get together as a group of girls during the festive period to enjoy a dinner out. And what you can see they are doing is indeed being engrossed in their technology rather than communicating with the friends around them. And it's a very interesting phenomenon. This is something that the media scholar Sherry Turkle would call being alone together. So you're physically present. You can see the girls sitting next to each other, but really they are alone. They are engrossed in their own very individual personal bubbles. And I wonder, is it really the case that disconnecting from your social surroundings, your offline social surroundings, is better than disconnecting from your online social surroundings, from your online social groups? It seems like this is indeed the case. This is an example of where this has happened. Now, this phenomenon has also been referred to as phubbing, snubbing somebody by means of being on your phone. Have you ever witnessed this? Have you ever been a victim to this? Or perhaps you have indeed been the phubber, where you've been using your technology whilst you are out for dinner with your family and friends. This is a phenomenon that keeps appearing whilst people are using social networking on a regular basis. Why are we engaging in this? Well, this has been related to, and I've seen it in my research, where people are have the fear of missing out. They are worrying about not being part of a rewarding experiences that others might be having, where they might not be part of it because they're not engaged in their social technology. The thing is that research also shows us that people who have a high fear of missing out have a lower well-being, they have a lower life satisfaction, and they may in general use social networking sites more than other people who don't have a high fear of missing out. During my research, I've talked to lots of psychotherapists around the world who are seeing people who are affected by excessive technology use. And I will give you a quote from one of the interviews that I've conducted. Now, this was a psychotherapist who told me that the young clients that he sees, those young clients who are using technology a lot, they fear the sort of relentlessness of ongoing messaging. So messages come through all the time. They need to respond all the time. They need to engage with their technology immediately at all times. At the same time, he says that, but concurrently with that is an absolute terror of exclusion. Now, what they do not want to happen is to be excluded from their social networks. And in order not to be excluded, they need to engage on a frequent basis. They need to immediately respond on an immediate basis. And I found that really interesting, especially as I've been told by participants in my research. There was one participant, he was in his early 20s. He said to me that when he's at home, he's sitting on the sofa, he's watching Netflix, he's got his phone in his hand, just like this. He keeps it in his hand, just like an extension really of his arm. Why? Because he thinks that he needs to be able to immediately respond to the messages that are coming through. And I was amazed by that, because that really means that he's taken quite literally the idea of technology being an extension of ourselves. And you may be aware that in the 60s, the Canadian Marshall McLuhan has been talking about technology or media being the extension of man. And I think it's so much more true nowadays in the present day and age, 60 years later. Technology has become an extension of ourselves. It's an extension of our physical body. As you can see, this phone fits very nicely and elegant, extends nicely and elegantly my arm. And at the same time, it's extending my mind. It helps me to connect with others. It helps me be entertained at all times. It helps me remembering appointments that I have and reminding me of people's birthdays, for example. Social networking is an extension of ourselves. It is the way that we live life nowadays. It allows us to authenticate our experiences and to make our experiences real. Social networking is a way of being. In addition to this, I'm thinking about social networking really fulfilling our basic needs as humans. What are the basic needs that we have as humans? Now, let me introduce you to the hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist who came up with the hierarchy of needs. This is a theory of human motivation, of human behavior. So you behave in particular ways in order to have a need fulfillment. And those needs, they are categorized based on different levels. So on the bottom, you will find the very basic human needs, physiological needs, if as you please. Those kinds of needs for food, water, and sex. And then you're moving up the pyramid to the higher level needs. In order for the higher level needs to be met, the lower level needs need to be met first. So you will find the other needs that are moving on across the pyramid as well. Safety, belonging, esteem, and self-realization. Now, what I found, and this is actually quite an interesting phenomenon, is the fact that those kinds of needs, this theory of the hierarchy of needs, can be very nicely applied to our social networking. And I will show you how. First of all, of course, we need the very basic needs. We need the internet connection, right? So without the internet, we wouldn't be able to engage with our social network. So this is a very basic, a very fundamental kind of a need, as there were, okay? Now, but in addition to this, social networks allow us to meet our safety needs. They allow us to meet our need for privacy. We can customize our social networking sites. We can decide who can friend us on social networks, who can follow us, who can view our information, who can comment on our posts, who can engage with us on our social networking sites. This is the way in which social networks allow us to fulfill our needs for safety. In addition to this, Our social networking sites will allow us to meet our need for belonging. We can connect with other people, and I've talked to you about this. One of the fundamental functions of social networks is for us to be able to connect, to have friends, to have followers, to engage in social dialogue, to share experiences, to share ideas with our network. So the need for belonging is a very crucial need. And I will put it in the words of the cyber researchers Julia and Wellman. They said the following: where old communities had streets and alleys, online communities are bound by bits and bytes. So really, our social networks are our online communities. Our social networks online are the present day communities that we're using, just like perhaps in the olden days, we would use cafes and bars as well. Now we have social networks to complement this. In addition to this, now the next level need, this is the need for esteem. This can also be met using social networking sites. We do this by gathering friends, by gathering likes. So an increased number of friends and likes would create the perception as if we have a higher esteem, we stand in a higher esteem, and we are being viewed in a higher esteem. In addition to this, social networking sites allow us to compare ourselves with other people. And that's particularly the case for visually based social networks, such as Instagram, for example. Comparisons are ripe on those kinds of sites. We can compare ourselves in terms of the lifestyle that we have or that others have, or physical appearance, for example. So comparisons are a crucial way of how to judge, evaluate your esteem or that esteem of other people. And then finally, when we reach the pinnacle of the pyramid, we will find the need for self-actualization. Now, self-actualization is indeed the highest level need that can only ever be met by a very small proportion of people. So it's the highest attainable goal in terms of human motivation. On social networking sites, we can meet the need for self-presentation. We can present ourselves in an idealized form. We can create the best impression on those social networking sites. And of course, we do that by presenting ourselves in the best possible light. You will very rarely find anybody on social networking sites posting pictures of them having only just got out of bed after a long night. Or very rarely will you find people sharing negative or unhappy moments in their lives. Perhaps a divorce or a bereavement is a very rare occasion. So self-presentation allows us to present ourselves in that kind of a way that is idealized, that is edited, that is changed in order to present the best possible self. In addition to this, social networking sites allow us to support other people on those sites. We can actually offer advice. We can listen to other people on those social networking sites. We can engage in that community spirit, or perhaps we want to simply send them some funny videos of pug puppies, for example, or of little kittens, just to cheer them up, to improve their day. So small little things like that allow us to engage in self-actualization. And therefore, Maslow's theory of the hierarchy of needs can be very nicely applied to social networks. As you can see, social networks are a way of being. They are a way of being, and they are a way of relating. Now, I advocate social networking for those wonderful things that they allow us to do. We can connect to other people, we can maintain our communities, we can create new communities based on our shared interests with other people, shared interests with other people who are part perhaps of another part of the world. There are no restrictions in terms of time or in terms of space. This is what I call the time and space compression. Connect anywhere, anytime with anybody who shares your particular interest, whatever that interest might be. At the same time, however, there's a little caveat that we need to bear in mind. You know, it has been suggested that an excessive use of social networking sites may indeed be problematic for some individuals, or perhaps even addictive. Now, I wonder if we were to assume that being on most of the time and using social networks most of the time is indeed the status quo, and most people are on most of the time, then where does that leave problematic use? I wonder. And that's why I'm thinking really, you know, what can we do in order to use those social networks in a healthy way, in a beneficial way, to really make use of the opportunities they give us without experiencing the possible drawbacks? And I have actually got a few tips for you based on the research that I've done over the years. And I encourage you to try out those tips and let me know whether or not they've worked for you. They're very simple, they're very straightforward, but they can be highly effective. So my first tip is make use of social networking sites. Actually, it might sound counterintuitive, but I recommend for you to make specific times in your day to use social networking, perhaps half an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. Take that time, get it out of your system, and then get on with the rest of your day. Now, my second tip is to ensure that you have technology-free times. For example, dinner time, okay? So spend your dinner time, have an actual good old conversations with your family and friends, okay? And in addition to this, have technology-free spaces in the house, like the bedroom, for example. I'm sure your sleep will thank you for it. And then the final tip that I have for you is to put the phone away when it's not in use. And that really allows us to just put it in the bag, put it in another room, out of sight, out of mind. There is a time and a space for social networking. I'm Daria Kuss here at TEDxAberystwyth.